I have an 8-year-old son. And like every parent, I have stayed up nights when he's had a cold and cough. Most of us are familiar with the routine. Sips of warm water, measuring the fever, and then, if the discomfort persists, giving them a spoonful of cough syrup that promises relief. In the last 2 months, similar spoonfuls have been killing children across the country. Chhindwara, a major city in Madhya Pradesh surrounded by rivers and the dense forest of Pench, has become the epicenter of this tragedy. Here's a father who lost his child.
Kailash Yadav, mera naam.
My name is Kailash Yadav.
Can you tell me, Kailash, what happened to your child?
He had a cold and cough. So I showed him to the doctor at Parasia. He prescribed cold rif. But after taking the medicine, his condition worsened. So we took him to the doctor for a second time. And he changed the medicine. But when I took him a third time, he said no.
Who said no?
Dr. Praveen Soni. He asked me to take him to some other clinic. He said he was unable to treat my son. So I took him to Chhindwara. The doctors there put him through tests. They said his kidney was completely damaged. They referred him to a hospital in Bhopal. Just as he was undergoing treatment in Bhopal, he fell silent.
Nihal, Shivam, Adnan, Usaid, Rishika, Shreya, Sandhya, Hitanshi, Vikas. 25 children across 3 states, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra and Rajasthan, lost their lives by consuming the cough syrup cold rif. Tests showed it contained high amounts of diethylene glycol or DEG, a toxic industrial chemical used in paints and brake fluid. The maker of the syrup was a Tamil Nadu-based company which had been producing it for years from a rundown factory that hadn't undergone a single regulatory inspection since it was set up in the 90s. And this is not new. From Mumbai's JJ Hospital tragedy in 1986 to the Jammu deaths in 2020 to tragedies in the Gambia, Uzbekistan and Cameroon in 2022 and 23, India's spurious drug problem returns every few years, deadlier than before. Convictions have been rare and attempts to fix the problem even rarer. So, in this latest deep dive, we spoke to victims, doctors, regulatory officials, a health activist, a lawyer, cops, and ET's pharma reporters to try and answer the following questions. How do the toxic cough syrups reach clinics and hospitals? Why do such deaths keep repeating? And what does this say about India's drug laws and the system that is supposed to protect us? Listen on, it's Thursday, the 16th of October. I'm Anirban Chowdhury. This is the Morning Brief. So, what happens when we consume DEG? Here's Dr. Arvind Bagga, Professor Emeritus and former head of pediatrics at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences.
So once you ingest diethylene glycol, the body metabolizes using certain enzymes, and these byproducts of diethylene glycol directly damage the kidney. Children will present usually, nausea, vomiting very acutely as soon as they take, in the next few hours. And over the next 24 hours, the kidney starts getting damaged. We need to be aware that we are only seeing the tip of the iceberg here. So it's the sickest patients who finally end up reaching a hospital and who end up with severe kidney failure requiring dialysis. There could be milder injuries also. Now, in a proportion of children, they may also get neurological symptoms in the sense of altered behavior. They may become comatose. and they may occasionally even have convulsions. Rarely, there could be liver damage as well. Overall, the mortality with this poisoning is to the tune of about 50 to 60% in the ones who reach a hospital.
Now, the probe into the latest spate of mortalities only started after about 10 children had died. Here's Pramod Verma, Inspector General at Jabalpur, Madhya Pradesh, who led the investigation. He spoke to my colleague, Diya Rekhi.
Sometime around September 15th, this information started trickling in from the Nagpur hospitals that children admitted there, they had renal failures and they had succumbed. And when the administration started probing into this issue as to what was the reason for their death, so initially they checked the water samples of that area, and then they tried for other reasons, larvae, rodents, etc. But once that was not conclusive, then the administration and the drug department, they homed in on the cough syrup which was prescribed to these children from one doctor in Parasia region. And this was in a way confirmed by the hospitals in Nagpur that indeed the children who were admitted there, all of them had been prescribed the same cold drip cough syrup. And then the Food and Drug Administration Department here in MP, they had approached the Tamil Nadu government for sampling and testing of the cough syrup which is made there in Kanchipuram. Then the result indicated that the percentage of diethyl glycol is excessively high. Permissible range is 0.1%, whereas it was found to be 48%, so which is 482 times, almost 500 times the permissible limit.
The investigation on the maker of the cough syrup, Srishan Pharma, uncovered a shocking trail of negligence. Propylene glycol is a compound that is frequently part of cough syrup compositions. The company had over the years bought cheaper industry-grade versions of the solvent rather than those meant to be supplied to pharma companies. Further inspection revealed more than 350 counts of rule violation, from unhygienic production areas and missing validation records to untreated water use, poor pest control, irregular money trails, and falsified data. Drug inspectors in Tamil Nadu shut down the plant, freezing all stocks and issuing a notice to the company to cancel its license. Here's Pramod.
We have registered the case for culpable homicide not amounting to murder due to gross negligence, and the Food and Drug Cosmetics Act, and one more section of the BNS relating to spurious medicines. The doctor has been arrested. He's under police custody for interrogation. At my level, I had set up an SIT to look into the detailed aspects and also to see if there are other such instances in the other districts of my zone.
There are other instances, of course, across the country. 2 other syrups made by Gujarati companies are under the scanner too. Relife by Shape Pharma and Respi Fresh TR made by Rednex Pharmaceuticals. There's more. Here's Vikas Dandekar, my colleague and ET's pharma editor.
Anirban, there is another company, Kesan Pharma, basically in Jaipur, where again a similar disaster happened. Their product had dextromethorphan, which is reported to have killed 11 children. In the most ideal situation, this ingredient, which was in this cough syrup, shouldn't be given to children below the age of 5. One important point here to note is Kesan was supplying to government hospitals in Rajasthan. And this is another mess. This was part of a chief minister's free medicine scheme in Rajasthan. The point that one needs to really understand is when the government is actually procuring medicines, we know that there are claims made that no, there are lots of quality checks and so on and so forth. But we know that the rates are also a very important part of procurement from government agencies. And so if these products are going into government schemes, imagine the kind of products that our population is consuming.
So, how do such products end up on prescriptions? Commissions? Kickbacks? Is there a nexus between doctors, hospitals, distributors, and these pharma companies?
This is a very organized racket, right? Small companies are emerging, the propaganda companies.
any 2-3 people, maybe medical reps. I shouldn't say medical reps, it can be anyone. So any groups of people can come together, they can formulate a bunch of products, link up with local doctors, in tier 3, tier 4, small towns, small villages, and say that, okay, this is what we have. We will name my product and you start prescribing. The doctor will give it on the basis of exactly what you mentioned, kickbacks. So at multiple levels, there are issues in this country and nobody has been actually taking a serious look at it.
And this has been happening for years. In 1986, at Mumbai's prestigious JJ Hospital, 14 patients, including children, died after being treated with adulterated glycerin. A probe found 90% DEG in the otherwise extremely harmless product. The maker, Alpana Pharma, based in Maharashtra, had received a license without so much as setting up a lab. In Jammu and Kashmir 2020, a locally sold cough syrup containing high amounts of DEG killed at least 12 children. They were made by a Himachal Pradesh company called Digital Vision. In 2022, DEG-laced cough syrups killed 70 children in the Gambia. The maker, an Indian company called Maiden Pharma. The same year, several children died in Uzbekistan after consuming a cough syrup called Doc 1 Max, made by an Indian firm, Marion Biotech. Later, Cameroon reported the deaths of children from a cough syrup known as Nature Cold, made by a company in MP called Riemann Labs. That's 140 lives across 4 countries in 2 years. Were the companies punished? Some were, most weren't. Marion Biotech's license was cancelled and then quietly restored. Riemann Labs' license was suspended, yet the owner reopened under the same license number a few years later. Digital Vision continues to operate, protected by a stay order from a local court in Jammu. Even Srishan Pharma had once lost its license only to have it reinstated. The rot is very deep, and it exposes a quagmire of outdated drug rules, their oversight and implementation. The drug industry in India is governed by a set of rules formulated more than 80 years ago under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. For a deeper understanding of this, I spoke to public health activist Dinesh S Thakur and lawyer Prashant Reddy T. Dinesh, a former Ranbaxy executive, exposed the company's systemic fraud, data fabrication, and faulty manufacturing practices. Dinesh and Prashant have co-authored a seminal book called The Truth Pill, The Myth of Drug Regulation in India. Here's Prashant.
When the Drugs and Cosmetics Act was enacted in 1940, the focus back then in the 1940s was primarily on the end product, that is the end formulation that was produced, whether it's a tablet or an injectable or a capsule, while modern regulation focuses a lot more on processes. The logic being that if you adhere to good manufacturing practices, the final product will definitely be of good quality. Now, while India has a good manufacturing practices code as part of the law, much of the regulatory enforcement activity under Indian law is still designed towards only the final product. And by that, I mean we have a system wherein drug inspectors randomly draw samples from the market, get them tested in government labs, and if the sample doesn't comply with quality standards, the company is prosecuted. This isn't the best way to approach regulation because it's very ad hoc. It's very, very random. It depends on what sample is drawn by which inspector. And we spend a lot of time doing this. I mean, drug inspectors, this is their main activity.
Here's Dinesh.
So you can imagine the kind of loopholes that this creates. Number one, most states, and we had done the study in 2019, they didn't have adequate money to buy samples from the market. So in that case, what would happen is the drug inspectors would usually buy the cheapest drugs available in the market. And the largest samples that we test in the country are antacids. Imagine, because they're cheap, because the drug inspectors can actually fulfill their quota of buying the number of samples, these are the samples that are collected. And you know where the problems are? The problems are largely in sterile injectables. We've seen this happen with injections of remdesivir at the peak COVID period, where contaminated injections manufactured by a Gujarat-based firm caused deaths among people What happened to that investigation? No one knows.
In the absence of proper investigations, inspections, and risk analyses, companies like Srishan continue to thrive and substandard medicines keep circulating. Here's Dinesh.
I can tell you that there is a lot of the same product made by the same company still in the market because we do not have the means, we don't have a legal framework to recall that product. Just because you shut down that company doesn't mean that the product is not out there in the market. It's sitting on pharmacy shelves right now, and nobody actually cares about it because some poor kid will be administered it, the same syrup again, and we'll have more deaths. But clearly, because we don't have a legal framework and we don't have the means and the desire to actually recall that product from the market, this is how things work here.
In a nutshell, drug law enforcement in India is reactive, random, and rare. Another big problem, the regulatory system is fragmented across the states and central government. Here's Prashant.
So now we have a system where you have 37 different drug regulators, one in each state and union territory. And then you have the central one sitting over the top. But the state guys have the most power in terms of issuing and cancelling manufacturing licenses. That power lies with them.
So, for instance, a drug made in Himachal Pradesh, which is a hub for drug making, can be sold all across the country.
But state drug controllers in other states cannot do anything against that plant in Himachal Pradesh. They cannot inspect it, they cannot shut it down, they cannot block it from sending products to their state. So this works very well for the pharma industry because they essentially have access to an entire market, but they are accountable only to the Himachal Pradesh drug controller, who doesn't do a very good job in regulating them.
As a result of this, there's a massive data black hole that spans everything from examinations to inspections. Here's Prashant.
There's very poor information sharing because there's no centralized database where all of them are contributing their inspection reports, test reports, etc., which makes it very difficult for everybody in the health space. Because even when government agencies want to conduct public procurement, they don't have a database where they can check the antecedents of a company.
Here's Dinesh.
The states have to publish, inspection data, inspection findings to tell people like us that, yes, we have X number of inspectors who have done Y number of inspections, and these are the findings that we've found, right? I haven't seen those kind of reports come out of any state, actually, and the center itself. If we can get every state to put all of their data in a publicly accessible, centralized database, and make it public in a timely manner, that would be a huge step forward, right? I mean, some states do that. Tamil Nadu does it, Kerala does it, Gujarat, used to do it, but, it's pulled back right now. But none of the Hindi belt states do it. None of the poorer states do it. Imagine if all these drug labs actually made their drug analysis timely, public, and made it accessible to everybody who's able to look at it. Even that single act of making that information public will give us a sense of how deep the problem is.
Last year, the government agency Central Drug Standard Control Organization or CDSCO tested more than 7,000 batches of cough syrups produced in 100 pharma units in India. More than 350 batches were found to be not of standard quality. But CDSCO is a central agency, the pharma company's licenses had been issued by the state governments, so in the center-state confusion, no action was taken against the drug makers. But if you thought the issues of spurious medicines was limited to small, nameless factories, think again. Here's Vikas.
In fact, large companies have been facing massive issues of adulterated products, but they also don't come out and tell you about it in open, because if they tell people and issue a public notice, in a day their product sales actually fall. The entire marketing department will go in a absolute tizzy. So there will be many such products. There are hypertensive products, there are cardiovascular products, there are diabetes products, there are massive antibiotics which are being copied. And no company comes out and says that my product has been copied, because if you know that, okay, this product was copied, then you will start avoiding that. You will go to the chemist and buy another product.
In fact, large pharma exporters seem to follow two completely different standards of operations and manufacturing.
One is for the developed markets. The second is for markets like India, other developing countries. So we have been hearing a lot about companies saying one world, one market, one product. That has not been happening.
The rules reflect this duality. After the Gambia incident, the government mandated that cough syrups must be tested at government-approved labs. But that additional layer of testing is only limited to exported drugs, not those sold domestically. Here's Dinesh.
Even for the export-related syrups, in Economic Times at that time had published an article that they had found 100 samples of what was tested for export had DG contamination. So you can only imagine if that was the quality of what our export products were. Imagine what our domestic supply was.
Now, let's see what's happening globally in terms of updated drug rules, timely inspections, coordination across regions, and data transparency. In the United States, the FDA inspects registered drug manufacturing plants on a 2 to 3 year cycle, or even more frequently for high-risk sites. It also conducts unannounced inspections, including of foreign facilities such as those in India. The FDA publishes its Form 483 warning letters and inspection observations, making compliance gaps publicly visible. Japan's Pharmaceuticals and Medical Devices Agency maintains rigorous oversight. It performs both on-site and document audits regularly. It publishes an annual inspection report on manufacturing benchmarks specifying the number of audits. Unannounced inspections are frequent. Its 2014 Act on Securing Quality, Efficacy and Safety calls for post-market surveillance and compels periodic re-examination of approved drugs. Australia's Therapeutic Goods Administration. It directs regular inspections and overseas audits and applies uniform standards to both domestic and imported products. And it requires track and trace, so every unit, that's a tablet, vial or syrup, carries a digital identifier at each transfer. To achieve these global standards, India's drug regulations need an urgent overhaul. Stricter manufacturing standards, raw material testing medicines before they are distributed, and pharmacovigilance. Most critical is a central regulatory authority, but it's also the most difficult. Here's Dinesh.
Each state derives considerable licensing revenue from the manufacturing facilities within its jurisdiction. The probability that the state will actually agree to give up that authority is close to zero. And so that's the reason why I don't think that it's an easy task to centralize drug regulation in India.
Not just states, there's pushback from the industry too. Here's Vikas.
What has happened is the lobby groups of these companies have been pressurizing the government that, this is a wrong move and this is going to be leading to shortages. So we need to be very careful about the ill effects of letting these companies thrive.
So as the wait for drug reforms drags on, what can we and our doctors do? I asked Dr. Bagga of AIIMS, are there any litmus tests to tell a safe syrup from a dangerous one?
Unfortunately, none. There are no litmus tests. One would have to trust certain brands. It's not only cough syrups, it's even plain paracetamol that has been found to have caused trouble. Even syrups like promethazine that you use for any sort of simple allergies, coughs and colds, and they are often used in young kids. And for a prescriber, it's very tough, and there is no test that you can really do on the spot. Again, I think please be aware that there is always going to be this issue of cost versus efficacy, and there are a lot of generics that are also there where you don't even know what you're prescribing. So one will have to balance all this.
So for us, as parents, the best option is to just say no.
Below 2 years, don't use any cough syrups. Even the World Health Organization and even the Government of India would say not to use cough syrups. Up to 6 years, use them with caution and preferably avoid them, So one will have to balance this, in the right perspective.
The truth this investigation leaves behind is stark. In a country that calls itself the pharmacy of the world, the safety of its own medicines remains uncertain. And it's an industry-wide phenomenon, spanning small and big companies. There are many voices in this episode, but the ones that will stay with me are those of the fathers who said their children went silent after consuming the cough syrups. We leave you with another voice of despair.
मेरा नाम निखिलेश धुर्वे है और मेरा गांव खमरा जामुन बिचवा है.
My name is Nikhilesh Dhurve and my village is Kamra Jamun Bichwa.
Was your child 2 years old?
2 years and 5 months.
Can you tell me his name?
Nihal Dhurve. He had a cold and a cough and a slight fever. We took him to Parisya to Dr. Praveen Soni. But after giving him the prescribed medicine for 2 days, he stopped urinating.
What medicine was this?
Cold ref. When he stopped urinating on the 3rd day of the medicine, we were asked to take him to a bigger hospital in Betul. He was there for 1 day. When his reports came, we were asked to take him to a hospital in Bhopal. He was there for 3 days. When his condition didn't improve, we brought him home. There was no relief. He was in acute pain. So we brought him home. The next day, he was gone. He went silent.
That's it for today. You were listening to this deep dive on the Morning Brief. It was produced by me, sound designed by Amrit Reggie, overdubs by Neil Ghai and Pranav Varshne, additional reporting by Diya Rekhi and Tina Thakur. A new episode of the Morning Brief drops every Tuesday, Thursday and Friday, wherever you get your podcasts. Keep listening.